Could you actually, as a major gift to the world, could you give Historian's Guide to Civilians on settler colonialism, white supremacy, and neoliberalism?
Easy, right?
You can reference my previous remarks with regard to the historical evolution of this term white supremacy. But in sum, it's the process whereby predominantly those of European descent were able to establish themselves by dint of colonialism in the first place as a ruling elite, not least in the Americas, but ultimately in a good deal of Asia and Africa as well. Notice that I sort of qualified the term because, as you know, in the United States, you don't necessarily have to be part of the European diaspora to be considered white. I mean, look at Ralph Nader, for example. He's Lebanese Christian background. But then that ties into the other aspect, which are the religious roots of white supremacy, because he comes from a Lebanese Christian background. I'm not so sure if he came from a Lebanese Muslim background, would he be inducted into the Hall of Halls of whiteness?
If his name were recognizably Arabic sounding.
Well, the same holds true for other populaces. I mean, for example, in the book, there's a reference to the late Senator Paul Laxalt, Laxalt, who was a close comrade of Ronald Wilson Reagan. Now, he was of Basque descent, Basque or the minority group in Spain.
Yeah.
And because his surname was not recognizably, quote, Hispanic, unquote, it allowed him to rise a bit higher because, of course, part of the project that unfolded in the United States involved a systematic and systemic denigration of things Spanish, for that matter, even not necessarily accepted into the hallowed halls of whiteness, to show you the level of denigration that they've been subjected to. Now, settler colonialism is this process that mostly, you could say, extends from Europe to other parts of the world. Although there is recent scholarship that talks about a kind of Japanese settler colonialism in, say, Taiwan, post 1895, for example, whereby this invading force sets itself up as the ruling elite over other populations and then extracts the wealth, exploits the labor for their benefit. Now, neoliberalism, of course, is a term that is a kind of shorthand for a so-called free market, so to speak, where everything is for sale. I mean, the exaggeration of neoliberalism would be every 15 feet as you walk down a sidewalk, you have to pay a toll, for example. Fortunately, we have socialist sidewalks where you don't have to pay a toll in order to walk on the sidewalk. And this is this sort of turbocharged capitalism meant to benefit the 1% that then has been forced on the rest of the world by U.S. imperialism and their sidekicks, including the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, et cetera. So whereby a country such as Zambia, for example, about maybe 50% of their budget right now does not go to healthcare or education, goes to paying back debts to banksters in London, New York, et cetera. And so that's the system under which we're now laboring. I think what's happening in the United States right now is in a sense, the chickens have come home to roost. So this is like, so U.S. imperialism, they inflicted fascism on Chile and other countries across the world. And there was not necessarily a mass uprising in the streets of the United States as these depredations and crimes were inflicted on other peoples.
Exactly.
And so now it's coming back home. It's just like an article talking about the disproportionate number of veterans in the Three Percenters, the Boogaloo Boys, Patriot Prayer, et cetera. And one of the journalists was making the point that one of the lessons that veterans learned in terms of their service abroad is that you solve political problems through military means.
Right.
And if it's good enough for Iraq and good enough for Afghanistan, well, why isn't it good enough for Portland, for example?
Yeah. Like the Mayor Pete quote, which I can't remember right now, but where he says, you know, he didn't go around carrying these weapons in Afghanistan just so he could have to come back here and deal with them.
It was something like, I didn't have to go around the streets of Afghanistan with an assault rifle just to come back here and see them in the streets. I'm like, well, what does that make you feel like?
Yeah. You don't want to be subjected to the stuff that you subjected other people to. And aren't you supposed to be a very good Christian, Mayor Pete? I get that. That's not the golden rule. Come on, call me up. I'll explain the New Testament to you. Mayo Pete.